Okay, so picture this. You're setting sail on this 5-year voyage, and you have no idea that you're going to return having, like, totally revolutionized how we understand life itself.
Right. Yeah.
It's Charles Darwin, the father of evolution,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And today, we're going to, like, dive deep into his life and his work, and we're going to talk about why his ideas are still shaping science today, which I think is so interesting.
Yeah, what's really fascinating to me is how this all, like, even got started.
Right.
Because Darwin wasn't just, like, this lone genius in a lab somewhere, right?
Yeah.
He came from this family that was just, like, steeped in medicine and science. Like,
It's in the blood.
yeah, like, his dad was a doctor, and his mom's side of the family, the Wedgwoods, they were, like, famous for their pottery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, like, observation and a focus on detail were already, like, part of his, upbringing in a way.
Yeah, totally.
But instead of being drawn to, like, pottery or patience or whatever,
Right.
he was drawn to, like, beetles
Beetles, yeah.
and barnacles.
Which makes you wonder, like, what sparked that passion in him?
I know.
Like, what happened?
Well, his early life's full of these little clues,
Okay.
He didn't love formal schooling, like, he wasn't into that.
Yeah.
But he was a huge fan of just, like, being out in nature, collecting things, exploring.
Right.
He even tried to, like, set up a chemistry lab.
Oh, wow.
So, like, the curiosity, that was definitely there.
Yeah. He was like a born naturalist.
Yeah,
Even though it sounds like his family kind of pushed him in a different direction, at least initially.
totally.
Like more traditional paths.
Right. Well, he gave medicine a try up in Edinburgh.
Oh.
And this is in the source material, he could not stomach surgery.
Yeah. I mean, understandable. Like, especially back then.
Oh, absolutely.
Before anesthesia and stuff.
Yeah, it's just like,
Yeah. No thanks.
no thank you.
So medicine was out. What happened next?
Okay, next up was Cambridge.
Okay.
And the goal there was to join the clergy. But even there, his love for natural science just, like, never faded.
Yeah.
He would go to lectures on botany and geology and just devour all these books on natural history.
So he was, like, preparing for a life in the church, but secretly he was yearning for, like,
Venture.
yeah.
Exploration.
Scientific discovery. Yeah.
I know.
What a, like, internal conflict.
I know. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then, boom, opportunity knocks. The HMS Beagle.
Here we go.
And he joined as the ship's naturalist, and they set off on this 5-year expedition
Yeah.
that would just, like, totally change the course of his life.
That's the voyage that, like, everybody knows about.
Yeah.
But, and I was reading in the transcript, it was not a luxury cruise.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
It was cramped. There was seasickness.
Oh, God.
But you have to imagine the access.
Oh, yeah.
Rainforests, deserts, the Galapagos Islands. It's like the diversity of life that he must have encountered. It must have been, like, just mind-blowing.
Totally mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then there are those Galapagos finches.
Yes.
That's, like, the big breakthrough, right?
That's what everyone always talks about. I mean, yeah, the Galapagos were, like, definitely pivotal for him.
Yeah.
Those finches with their, like, crazy beaks that are all adapted to different food sources. It's like they provided this living laboratory for his whole theory of evolution by natural selection.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the process, it didn't actually, like, start there.
Oh, so it wasn't like a eureka moment.
No. It was years and years of meticulous observation,
Okay.
questioning, and just, like, refining his ideas.
Yeah.
And remember, this was back when most people believed that species were just fixed.
Like, they didn't change.
Exactly. Unchanging, yeah.
Ah.
So Darwin's thinking, it was, like, totally radical.
Okay, so walk us through it.
Yeah.
Like, how did all of these observations from the beetles to the barnacles to the finches, like, how did that lead to this theory that was so groundbreaking?
Okay, well, Darwin saw that, like, within any species, there's natural variation, right?
Right.
So some individuals, they're just, like, faster, stronger, better camouflaged, whatever.
Right.
And in this constant struggle for survival,
Yeah.
limited resources, changing environments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those advantages, those little differences,
They matter.
they matter a lot.
Yeah.
So it's not even, like, just about being strong. It's about being, like, the best suited to your specific environment.
Perfectly suited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the individuals with these advantageous traits, they're the ones that are more likely to survive, more likely to reproduce,
Yeah.
and pass those traits down. And that's the key.
So over time, like, the species slowly changes.
Exactly. It gradually changes, yeah.
It's like nature is selecting the traits that work.
It's like nature is selecting, like it's choosing.
Survival of the fittest, as they say. But I mean, this must have been like a huge slap in the face to what people thought back then.
Oh, yeah. It challenged, like, those deep-seated beliefs about how life came to be. And you know what? The debates that started back then, they're
Yeah.
still going on today.
No.
But within the scientific community, like Darwin's ideas, they gradually gained acceptance, as
Yeah.
more and more evidence came out.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effects that came from just one book.
One book.
I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't just biology.
Yeah.
It was anthropology. It was genetics. It was ecology.
Oh.
Like, Darwin gave us this framework for understanding that all life is interconnected.
And that's powerful.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And even now, all this time later, his work is like the foundation for so much scientific discovery.
That's incredible.
It is.
So we keep talking about these big ideas, but I'm kind of curious about the actual process,
Okay.
Like, how did he actually go from just observing things to this full-blown scientific theory?
Oh, that's where Darwin's, like, true genius comes in, I think.
Okay.
It wasn't just about seeing the patterns,
Yeah.
and it was about how meticulously he gathered evidence.
Okay.
Like, those journals from the Beagle voyage, they weren't just travelogues.
Yeah.
They were packed with all these detailed measurements and sketches and comparisons of species from all these different environments.
So it was like
Oh, yeah.
actively testing his ideas.
Yeah, he was constantly testing his ideas against the evidence he was gathering.
Yeah.
And that's so crucial to understanding how science really works.
Right.
It's not about, like, pronouncements from on high or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about building a case piece by piece.
Right.
And those Galapagos finches, they're like the perfect example.
Right. Right.
But there were, like, tons of others.
The transcript mentions his work with giant tortoises.
Oh, yeah.
How do those fit into his theory?
So on the Galapagos, each island had its own population of tortoises, right?
Okay.
And each population had these distinct shell shapes.
Huh.
Like some had saddle-shaped shells,
Oh,
which
yeah.
let them reach higher vegetation.
Finches.
Others had more like dome-shaped shells. Okay.
Better for grazing on lower plants.
So like their shell shape was directly related to like their food source.
Exactly.
It's-
That's fascinating.
It wasn't just random variation. It
Yeah.
was adaptation driven by natural selection.
Like nature was choosing.
Yeah, choosing those traits that worked best.
Ah.
So the tortoises with the shells that best suited their environment on each island,
Right.
those were the ones that were more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those traits on.
Wow.
And he saw this pattern like everywhere.
Like in all these different species.
Everywhere, from the beaks of birds to the camouflage of insects.
Wow.
The natural world was just like teeming with evidence of adaptation.
Huh.
But Darwin didn't stop there. He wanted to understand like the underlying mechanism of inheritance.
Right, because for natural selection to work, those traits have to get passed down.
Exactly.
Right.
He knew traits were inherited,
Okay.
but how that happened was still a mystery. So he came up with this theory called pangenesis, involving these tiny particles that carried hereditary information from different parts of the body to the reproductive organs.
So he was kind of on the right track with the idea of inheritance,
Totally.
but he didn't have the full picture.
Not quite, no.
Right.
It wasn't until like way later when Gregor Mendel's work on genetics was rediscovered that the puzzle was complete.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about that.
So Mendel, through his experiments with pea plants, showed that traits were passed down through these like discrete units,
Okay.
what we now call genes.
Oh, genes. Okay.
Yeah. So Mendel provided that missing piece, the mechanism of how those variations arise and are passed down.
It all comes together.
Right. And the combination of Darwin's theory of evolution with Mendel's genetics,
Yeah.
it created what we call the modern synthesis.
Okay.
And that's like the foundation of how we understand the diversity of life today.
Wow. So two scientists working decades apart
I know.
ultimately contributed to this like unified view of life.
It's pretty amazing.
It really is.
And it just highlights the collaborative nature of science,
Yeah.
Like even without all the answers, Darwin just opened up this whole new way of thinking about life on Earth.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
we've been talking about, Belly, like finches and tortoises and all that.
Right.
But I keep thinking about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
Like if evolution is this constant process, are humans still evolving?
Oh, that's a question that Darwin himself thought about a lot.
Right.
And the answer is like a definite yes.
Okay.
As long as there's variation within a species
Right.
and environmental pressures, evolution is going to keep happening.
So like what might the future hold for human evolution?
Well, it's impossible to say for sure,
Yeah.
but we can look at some trends,
Okay.
like our reliance on technology.
Right.
It might favor cognitive adaptations,
Oh.
maybe better multitasking or faster information processing, something like that.
And with climate change happening,
Oh, yeah.
like creating all these new challenges, maybe adaptations related to heat tolerance.
Yeah,
Or resource scarcity will become more important.
totally. Because remember, evolution, it doesn't have like a specific goal in mind. It's
Yeah.
just a response to the environment.
Right.
And the environment's constantly changing.
Especially with all the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, especially with human influence. That's a good point.
That's a really powerful point, I think.
Yeah,
So Darwin's work isn't just about the past.
right.
It's about understanding the forces that are going to shape life on Earth.
Including us.
Including us, yeah,
Yeah,
going forward.
for sure.
But before we get too carried away with the future, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier. Deep time.
Oh, yeah.
It's mind-boggling to think about like the vastness of time
Yeah.
that's involved in evolution.
I know, it's hard to wrap your head around.
It is.
But it's essential to grasp that concept of deep time, to
Mhm.
fully appreciate, like, the scope of evolution. You know, all those small adaptations we've been discussing, they accumulate over millions, even billions of years. It's hard for us to even imagine that kind of time scale.
It is. It's like trying to imagine the distance to a star.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's incredibly vast,
Right.
but it's almost beyond comprehension.
It really is. You need to kind of shift your perspective to really understand just how grand evolutionary history is.
Okay.
Like, imagine a branch of a tree
Oh.
with each branch representing a new lineage
Okay.
that's diverging from a common ancestor.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And over these immense stretches of time, those branches keep splitting and evolving,
Right.
creating this intricate tapestry of life that we see today.
And somewhere on one of those branches, we find ourselves connected to every other living thing on this planet.
Through this shared history.
Through this shared history, it's amazing.
I know, and that interconnectedness, it's such a profound realization, I think.
It is.
It changes how we view our relationship with nature,
Yeah.
with other species, and even with ourselves.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the ethical considerations that Darwin's work inevitably brings up.
Oh, okay. So we've been talking about adaptation,
Right.
natural selection, all that.
Yeah.
But what happens when humans start manipulating the process?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
With our growing understanding of genetics, thanks in part to Darwin's legacy,
Right.
we now have the power to manipulate life in ways that we couldn't have even imagined before.
I mean, we're talking like genetic engineering,
Yeah.
gene editing, even the potential for creating entirely new life forms.
Exactly. It's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
It is. It's like we've been given this incredibly powerful tool,
Right.
but we're still figuring out how to use it responsibly.
And that's where the ethical dimension comes in.
Okay.
What are the limits of human intervention in evolution?
Yeah.
What are the risks that we might be facing?
Right.
These aren't easy questions to answer,
No, they're not.
but they're questions that we have to ask.
You do.
Yeah, Darwin's work doesn't give us the answers,
Right.
but it gives us a way of thinking about these really complex issues.
It's like a framework.
Yeah, it encourages us to think critically about our place in the natural world,
Right.
our responsibility to other species,
Yeah.
and the long-term consequences of our actions.
Right. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Darwin's world.
We have.
From his early life and that incredible voyage on the HMS Beagle
Yeah.
to like the whole development of his theory of evolution
Right.
and its impact, which is huge on science.
Mm-hmm.
But now I kind of want to shift gears a bit
Yeah.
and talk about what it all means for us.
For humanity.
Yeah, for humans.
Yeah.
Because Darwin's work wasn't just about finches and tortoises, right?
Right, absolutely not.
It totally changed how we think about our own place in the natural world.
It shifted our perspective completely.
So if we accept that humans evolved from earlier primates, like his theory suggests,
Right.
then like where does that leave us?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. It raises some really big questions.
It does.
Like, are we just another species in this like grand tapestry of life?
Right.
Or does our intelligence, our culture, our self-awareness, like, does that set us apart?
That's a debate that's been going on for, like, over a century, ever since Darwin published On the Origin of Species.
Wow, really?
Yeah, there's some people who argue that our ability for things like language and art and abstract thought, that makes us unique.
Exceptional.
Yeah, exceptional. That's the word.
And I mean, it's true. We do have this ability to reflect on ourselves.
Yeah.
To like shape our environment in ways that other species can't.
Totally.
But on the other hand, we're still subject to the same like biological laws, the
Yeah.
same evolutionary forces
As everything else.
as every other living thing on Earth.
Exactly. Like our brains, our complex societies, even our anxieties and aspirations.
Right.
All of that can be seen as products of the same evolutionary processes that have shaped all life.
It's like we're not separate from nature, we're a part of it.
We are part of it. That's a great way to put it.
It's kind of humbling in a way, you know?
It is, yeah.
We like to think of ourselves as like masters of the universe or something.
Right. In control.
But Darwin's work kind of reminds us that we're just like deeply embedded in this web of life.
Yeah.
We're connected to all these other species.
Since you're connected, yeah.
And that interconnectedness has implications, I think, for how we approach some of the big challenges that we're facing.
Oh, absolutely. Like climate change,
Yeah.
conservation, even things like social justice.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
How does understanding evolution, like, how does that help us with those issues?
Well, if we recognize that all life shares a common ancestor, that
Yeah.
we're all part of this like grand evolutionary experiment, it changes how we view our relationship with the natural world.
Yeah.
It's not us versus them anymore.
Right?
It's understanding that our fate is tied to the fate of all these other species.
It's like we're all in this together.
Exactly.
It's like damaging ecosystems or driving species to extinction.
Yeah.
It's not just harming nature.
It's harming ourselves, ultimately. Yeah, we depend on this intricate balance of ecosystems
Right.
for our own survival.
Our own survival, yeah.
We need clean air and water, fertile soil, a stable climate,
Yeah, all that stuff.
all of it.
Darwin's insights, like, they highlight how important conservation is.
Totally.
Recognizing that we're not just, like, stewards of nature.
Right.
We're part of it.
We are part of it, yeah.
And it makes me think about climate change, which is like,
The big one?
yeah, arguably the biggest threat we're facing.
Absolutely.
It's driven by our actions.
Right.
Our reliance on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And the consequences are, we're seeing them already.
Oh, yeah, all over the world.
And from an evolutionary perspective,
Right.
it's like climate change is this massive selective pressure.
Totally. It's changing the rules of the game.
Yeah.
As temperatures rise, weather patterns shift, ecosystems are disrupted.
Species are going to have to adapt.
Yeah, adapt, migrate, or face extinction.
And that includes us.
It does. We're not exempt from natural selection, even with all of our technology and everything.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
But this brings us to another, like, really important part of Darwin's legacy.
Okay, what's that?
The ethical consideration.
Right.
Because with all this knowledge we have about genetics, which is partly thanks to Darwin,
Totally.
we now have this power to manipulate life in ways that, like, people couldn't have even dreamed of before.
I know, it's crazy.
Genetic engineering, gene editing, even the potential to create entirely new life forms.
It's both thrilling and daunting at the same time.
It is. It's like we've opened this door to this whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah.
But we're still, like, fumbling around for the light switch.
Yeah, we're figuring it out as we go.
So where do we draw the line?
Right.
What are the ethical implications of, like, messing with the building blocks of life?
These are huge questions.
They are.
And they're questions that Darwin's work doesn't really answer directly.
Right.
But it provides us with this framework for thinking about them.
Okay.
It forces us to grapple with our role as, like, shapers of evolution.
Wow.
To consider the potential consequences, good and bad, of what we're doing.
So it's not just about scientific progress.
Right.
It's about ethical responsibility.
Exactly.
We need to be asking ourselves what kind of future we want to create.
Yeah.
Not just for ourselves, but for all life on Earth.
I love that. That's a really good way to put it.
Darwin's legacy isn't just about the past.
No.
It's about making choices about our future.
It's about understanding that evolution is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And that we are now a part of that process in a way that no other species ever has been.
And that's a powerful message.
It is.
And I think it's a good place to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Charles Darwin.
I agree.
So thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this journey through the life and legacy of Charles Darwin.
Absolutely. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep evolving.